This is posted to speaking to 50 million persons populating the Texas for the Beijing Hour. I'm Ben Jihan. As the deal was announced, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson dismissed Hong
on that situation,
people battling depression in Australia.
I've been listening to this for 4 fucking minutes. There was no problem. Instant, we're connected. No problem.
Stay up to date with the latest headlines and everything China related.
For the Beijing Hour, I'm Hui.
I'm Shen.
This is KPT.
I'm Shen.
Everything in focus.
The reason I came out.
Beijing Hour.
Be wary of this girl. What just happened was not okay.
The Bachelor, Mondays 8/7 Central on
Sino-U.S. ties back on the track of steady development. Wang Yi made the remarks in his Lunar New Year message to members of the diplomatic corps in China ahead of Spring Festival, the Year of the Ox, which falls on February 12th this year. Wang says China is ready to restart dialogue and conversations, properly manage differences, and focus on mutually beneficial cooperation.
Only times I don't get problems, I start fucking writing about them in the title bar.
Of strengthening the China-Russia partnership and China-EU cooperation. Wang says China will stand in solidarity with countries across the globe to secure an early victory against COVID-19 and to boost the global economic recovery and development. With the Ox approaching on the Chinese lunar calendar, consumers are eagerly buying Ox-themed decorations for the upcoming Chinese New Year that falls on the 12th. Feifei reports.
Ox-themed toys are one of the hot-selling items ahead of the Spring Festival. A resident in Longyan, Fujian Province, is shopping with his daughter.
This year is the year of the ox, so we bought some toys for my child. They symbolize good luck in the new year.
In Yiwu, known as the world's capital of small commodities, retailers say Chinese zodiac products with cute designs are typically the most popular ahead of each Spring Festival. Hu Yongyan is a toy wholesaler based in Yiwu. She said shelves of ox toys are quickly emptied whenever they're restocked.
Yeah, because these start teaching the kids about the calendar. It's not because of some other fucking reason.
There are only a few dozen of them left, and products in this row are also basically sold out. Supplier Wang Yan has returned to the Trippz city multiple times to restock.
We've received a constant flow of orders from a huge number of clients since November of last year. The demand has outstripped our supply. Currently, the plant is running at full capacity.
It's not only toys, but arts and crafts are also being ox-themed to meet consumer demand. Shanghai-based artist Liu Gang paints with a note technique that has a history of over 100 years.
Finger painting artists use their fingers and palms to paint. Many details are done by the nails. This year is the year of the ox, so paintings with ox are very popular.
Elements of the ox
It starts in 3 fucking days, and now they're talking about it.
In shopping malls. People say they're happy to see
they pretend to do Western holidays. Their biggest shopping day of the year, 11/11.
This is Feifei.
China's home to the world's largest online community.
Yeah.
There are still 400
Everything was about Christmas for 6 fucking weeks.
They
They wait till 3 days before the Chinese New Year to talk about it.
A report from the China Internet Network Information Center says the country had nearly 1 billion internet users by the end of last year, accounting for a fifth of the world's total online population. That means the rest 400 million people can access the internet. Nearly 30% of non-internet users have found themselves barred from public places because they don't have a health code on the smartphone. A quarter failed to make payments as many retailers refused cash during the pandemic, and 24% struggled to receive certain public services because of fewer physical public offices available. The report shows 60% of the non-internet users come from rural areas. Zhang Xiao from the China Internet Network Information Center addresses various reasons behind the number of those not using the internet.
When conducting the survey, we found several major reasons people were not using the internet, such as a lack of computer skills and a poor level of knowledge. It's important to enhance the public's digital skills. It's also important to help the elderly to adapt to the trend. government has rolled out a series of policies to help the move.
To fill the gap, the Ministry of Industry and Information has said that the country will promote digital enhancement on some existing infrastructures. The Ministry of Education has also pledged to improve the coverage of online education to the vast number of rural and less developed areas in China. Former President Zhang Yaqin of Chinese tech company Baidu addresses the importance of creating equal opportunities by reducing the digital gap.
I think as industry, as the society, we have to be very conscious and responsible for that, making sure we provide the opportunities, whether it's training or new jobs for the people. And make sure
remember, everybody
the Chinese government has rolled out several major projects to boost internet coverage, rural e-commerce, internet-powered education, and public welfare.
Right.
Zhang
The
Xiao
problem is
said
the way we're
China has
doing it
made
is some people don't
significant
have internet,
progress
so
in
we're gonna,
reducing the digital
teach all
divide.
people to use a
It will
phone.
still take time for all
What are they gonna
underdeveloped
do with the other
regions to receive more
23
inclusive
chocolate
and
chips?
qualified internet services.
我们相信，就是在网络复兴中 We believe empowering education is particularly important for internet-based poverty
You're
alleviation.
literally repeating word for word what you heard from BC and Ontario.
And secondary
What is the
schools in
hugest
China?
population of
Nearly
Chinese people that actually
100%.
get somewhere in life
All
outside of China?
hospitals in
BC and
poverty-stricken
Ontario.
areas have access to remote healthcare services.
Data showed by November 2020, the coverage rate of fiber optic networks in China's poverty-stricken villages
Is
had increased
irrelevant.
to 98%.
So,
For the Beijing Hour, this
98%
is
of those
Guyan.
people don't have a
China said the
fucking
most
computer in their
provinces
life.
offering
They don't
duty-free
see a
delivery
computer, ever.
services to departing passengers in a bid to make
Fiber optic
shopping
cable to
more
nowhere.
convenient in Hainan's free trade port. Juju has more.
But you get the
Travelers
state-owned
departing from
enterprise
Hainan
telephone
can now
company
collect their
employed to do that.
purchased
That's great.
duty-free products by mail delivery. This move has been welcomed by most travelers.
All the people
We have
using these
had-
5G
I don't need to
phones,
wait in the line now. I can mail my
you pay
purchased
for those fiber
products
optic cables
directly to
thrown
home.
nowhere.
It's much more convenient this way.
For products such as wine, it is very troublesome if it broke in my suitcase. Delivering them directly to my home eases my concerns.
The products will be delivered within 72 hours to all provincial Chinese cities with complimentary shipping. Residents departing Hainan can
They'll
also
give you a
collect
bag
their
to carry your
purchased
wine
duty-free
in?
products after returning to the island. Fu Tianxia with the local duty-free shop says the collection procedure is
Chinaman in
quite
a Chinese
simple.
liquor store can't figure out where to
They
get
can
bags
show
from.
us their
You're
national
serious.
ID
You're
cards
serious.
to let
This
us
is what you're
know that the
presenting as your
person who
fucking
bought the
news stuff.
product, paid the bill, and collected the product is the same person. Then they can pick up their items. Qualified residents include Chinese citizens holding Hainan ID cards, residence permits, or social security cards, as well as expats living and working in Hainan with residence permits. Zhang Jianping with the Foreign Trade and Economic
you just said
Cooperation
that.
Institute of China's
Those with
Ministry of
residence
Commerce
permits.
says such moves can improve Hainan's competitiveness as an international tourism consumer center and a free trade port.
Hainan's offshore
That's all I've been
duty-free
listening straight
shopping
for about
has
6
become a
minutes,
bright
7
spot in the
minutes.
construction of the Hainan Free Trade Port, as well as the Hainan International Tourism and Consumption Center. There is fierce competition in the duty-free shopping areas in free trade ports. Hainan has many other competitors, such as Hong Kong and Singapore free trade ports. So
Oh.
increasing the duty-free
So you
products
don't, you
cost
fucking
effectiveness
retards. Your
and
competition's on the
improving customer
mainland.
shopping
Wow, you're
experience and
fucking
efficiency
stupid.
are vital.
Hainan's other preferential measures to promote duty-free shopping include lowering
These
taxes
people have already
and
decided
raising
to
duty-free
leave the
quotas.
mainland to go shopping.
Data shows the average daily duty-free sales hit 120
They're not going from
million
Ireland. They're not choosing it to
$18
which
million
island should we go
US
to.
by
No,
the
they're
end of
not.
last year, an
I
increase
don't
of more
compete
than
with no weed
twofold
men.
year-on-year.
I
In
compete
June
with the
last
beer
year,
store, the
Chinese
liquor store, and the
authorities released a
pharmacies.
master plan for the Hainan Free Trade Port, aiming to basically establish a free trade port system focusing on trade and investment liberalization by 2025 and become more mature by 2035.
You heard them saying that they're a
The
liberal
Beijing Hour
republic
on
too,
Tutu.
eh? Liberal
Coming
democracy,
up,
democratic
America's
republic. or
plan to
some
reopen
shit, yeah.
schools.
History is made up of stories. Put down
This
those
is all-
lengthy
this
books
is all
spanning
about
thousands of years, and instead
ambiguities in
follow
language.
the makers and shakers of
It's all
Chinese
about
history
ambiguities in
podcast,
language.
which presents the biographies of 20
Chinese
historic
don't know what
figures who
democracy
shaped the course of
means.
ancient China.
You think it means
Meet the
electing
most
the leader?
renowned ancient Chinese
It means
rulers,
the
ministers,
biggest group
thinkers,
gets to bully
scientists, poets, and
everyone
rebels,
else.
and find out how they
You win
continue
first
to
class
influence the
majority here.
Chinese
You
to
don't
this
even
day.
need 1/3 of the
Subscribe to
vote.
Makers and Shakers of Chinese History for free on your favorite
So that's the
podcast
definition
app.
of democracy.
It's 24 past the hour now. U.S. President Joe Biden's chief medical advisor renewed.
Oops. I told you, I got nothing for you. Back to Biden. Let's talk about Biden. Then we'll switch back to how good the Chinese economy is doing. And you repeat the same 3 numbers 10 fucking times in 5 minutes. How did you get this stupid in one weekend? What the fuck happened? I don't feel bad at all. The sheer the fallacies, just straight up or the unconnected. I forget how the phrase is, but they're saying 2 things that aren't connected, and so that's their argument. Like, what are you fucking talking about?
Allowed them to muscle Biden's plan through.
I don't care. What the fuck's a farmer who doesn't know that antibiotics don't improve yields gonna do with fiber optics? You're too stupid to look up the labels on the fucking pill bottles. Can't figure out what's wrong with his fucking farm. This is what's going on in China. You keep copying white people and not figuring out that the white people never succeeded anywhere ever.
Energy security and on reassuring and helping Ukraine.
They can't grow enough food to survive here now. Their birth rate is half our birth rate.
Than a focus on pressuring Germany and using extraterritorial sanctions on European companies.
5 white people today, there'll be 4 next generation.
Derek, Biden also said the U.S. will be tougher on Russia. So how do you view Biden's Russian policy?
Well, he's not going to be an internal agent for Russia. That's a nice aspect. Beyond that, you know, I think a lot of this is rhetorical, right? It's sending messages.
Yeah, how do you have a Russia policy? What part of Russia do you run?
I'm not.
What do you export to Russia or import from Russia? Nothing. So what the fuck are you talking
Look forward to me. They're waiting for me a lot of times when I get there.
Her car packed with food, she heads out. Sure enough, before she even enters this senior citizen apartment, she's greeted like an old friend.
So did you contact Washington Hospital Center or they reached out to you?
Glenn Hamlin is a resident here and a We Are Family client.
You haven't gotten the COVID vaccine? No, I haven't gotten that. Do you have a computer? Do you have access to the internet? No, I don't have nothing like that. No, I don't have access to none of that.
We Are Family will work with people like Glenn Hamlin to navigate the vaccine registration process, hoping to get all their seniors vaccinated in the coming weeks. Anderson says on the local level, things are slowly getting better.
Since this started, we have heard once what the ingredients are. That was yesterday.
On COVID. But even once the pandemic has passed, he knows more work will remain.
In the short term,
the things they claim are in it contradict what they say isn't in it. And then they say ethylene.
We're trying to make sure they get vaccinations. But ultimately, what we want is a community where neighbors look out for each other as a matter of course, and that we all recognize each other as sisters and brothers in one family.
Until then, it's more grassroots outreach.
Accomplish what?
Door to door, helping one person at a time.
That was Jim Spellman reporting from Washington, D.C.
And every time there's something completely meaningless busy work, they put black people to work on it. They said it last night on 640. Let the black people do it. They'll get all the work done.
With a low of 11. Classes sunny and 8, then down to -4.
And magically, we're fucking being knocked offline over and over and over.
North America, Washington, D.C. will be mostly sunny on Monday.
Every time they had a segment of about 20 minutes of
New York
Black
City,
History
mostly sunny
20
and
minutes I couldn't get online.
In Africa, Nairobi's getting some clouds in 21. Finally, to Oceania, Port Vila's getting mostly sunny conditions in 28
I'm making it all up.
It's time for a short break. So far this hour, at least 10 bodies have been recovered in the areas affected by flash flooding in northern India. The Chinese foreign minister
what the fuck happened?
Sino-U.S. ties.
You said a glacial burst, and then you said a dam, and that's two different things.
In Alberta. Restrictions are about to ease, but the threat is far from gone.
The virus is still a scary thing.
The allegations involving Canada's former top soldier.
You have 4 viruses now.
Did the defense minister tell
146
about his concerns? plus a glacier burst in India's Himalayas.
I don't know how the
Dozens
fuck you
are
people all got
feared
these jobs
dead.
and high school graduations
been
and
waiting
shit when
for
you
more
didn't
representation.
pass
A
basic
superhero
biology
reflective
or
of the
English or
world we live in.
math or science or geometry. Geometry, I tell you, putting the desks all the way to the walls of the classroom is not the equidistant way to do it.
Good evening and thank you for
It's
joining
irrelevant
us.
datum
Canada
that
has
you
its
didn't tell us
first
what's
case of
useful
the
to know.
Brazil
What's the
variant, and
maximum
it's in
distance you can
Toronto.
get between them?
The person who
It's probably
tested
a meter
positive
because
is
they're already
in
a meter
hospital and
apart.
did travel to the South American country. These variants are worrisome as more provinces start easing
Not
restrictions. As Heather Yerkes West reports,
More
it's
provinces.
these
Well,
risks that are
you got
making
the
some
stock analysts
Albertans
telling you
worry
the
about
numbers have been going
reopening
down
too
steadily.
soon.
The stock analysts.
It is a heartbreaking reminder of how dangerous COVID-19
Same
can
idiots
be.
that say, oh, the market's
Among
up,
the
we all
more
made
than
money today.
160 cases now linked to
Prove
this
that with
all-in-one
GameStop.
meatpacking plant in Red Deer, Alberta, the union representing workers says one young employee has died.
We are conducting an investigation. We know that he was an Ollie Mill worker. We know that he was about 30 years of age. We know that he had COVID-19.
The company says it's investigating the death, but outbreaks at this plant and Cargill's in High River highlight the fact that COVID-19 is still a real threat in Alberta, even as overall numbers continue to fall. With around 450 people in hospital, down from nearly 1,000 in late December, Alberta will move into its first phase of reopening Monday.
Buying up the milk
It
that the government dumps down the
includes
drain?
dining at restaurants and one-on-one fitness activities. Kids sports were added this weekend, catching many in the community off guard.
We learned the news on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. through Twitter, and it came as a surprise to all of us. In fact, many of us thought we missed something.
In a tweet, Dr. Dina Hinshaw said, starting February 8th, children and youth will also be allowed to participate in lessons, practices, and conditioning activities for indoor and outdoor team-based minor sports and athletics. All games continue to be prohibited.
You all talk like child molesters pretending you're not, trying to normalize
cohorts if games occur, whereas practice sessions are confined pretty much to the same group, and so consequently that's another cautious way to proceed.
No, it's not.
Dr. Chris Modi believes Alberta's first phase of reopening can be done
hanging out together doesn't have nothing to do with if you got the same antibodies.
But unknowns like new variants of the virus have some business owners feeling unsure.
You need to get antibodies.
The virus is still a scary
what they do to give you antibodies? Give you the virus. That's how slow these people are. They've been working on this theory for 100 years.
On the reopening strategy with business, and you always hear that people may forget about you at some point. So, anyways,
you could argue. We'll look up when babies get their fucking antibodies.
Alberta's next phase of reopening would include banquet halls and
banquet halls, what we call after-hours
Trump
clubs.
administration.
Somehow they're legally allowed to serve alcohol till 4 in the morning. No one talks about this.
First to receive calls from Biden. So, what are the expectations from traditional allies?
Now.
Cambodian officials say the vaccines will be provided free of charge to people who are at high risk of getting infections, such as medics, teachers, armed forces personnel, taxi drivers, and others. The 34th Summit of the African Union was held over the weekend. The continental body debated moves to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic and vaccination campaigns. AU officials say the two-day video summit was aimed at strengthening the collective response to the crisis, marshaling resources for the benefit of all, and striving to ensure that no country is left behind. The AU has already secured around 670 million doses for its member states, and it plans to immunize at least 60% of the population over the next 3 years. The virtual meeting has also re-elected Musa Faki Mohammed for
maybe there would be a bit more of a blend of election to be about vaccines.
Cooperation, that maybe in the Trump administration, maybe the rhetoric will not be quite as sort of bold as the Trump administration.
I think just as ignorant. China's all about soy sauce. Why that's ignorant? Because the Dutch export more soy sauce.
The second question that I would say is particularly for South Korea is the Trump administration tried a dialogue with North Korea.
You don't buy nothing from them.
It did not really play out, but it is a possibility. It's a platform that exists. And the question is the Biden administration going to try to resume the dialogue with Pyongyang, or are they going to decide to revert back to the old policy of essentially putting pressure on North Korea and expecting some changes before there's any meaningful dialogue? That again is not very clear, but I think that's going to be important from the position of Tokyo, and so see what the Biden administration
senior government official told Global News on Friday that the Prime Minister did not know about the allegations until it was first made public on Tuesday. The Canadian Forces National Investigation Services have opened an investigation and interviewed one of the women. And today, the Defense Minister promised a second separate D&D investigation will be thorough.
We will be looking at who is complicit.
Yeah, I forgot. This dude's under investigation. Do we need to just retire? He's under investigation.
Making sure that we get the appropriate recommendations moving forward to make the necessary changes so that finally that women can feel confident that there will not be retribution if they come forward.
Vance has denied all allegations that he ever acted inappropriately towards any female subordinates. Robin.
Mike Licature in Ottawa. Thanks, Mike. Police in Ottawa have taken a man into custody after a small fire was set inside the building housing the Canada Revenue Agency's head office. Police say a man turned himself in after breaking a window of the Connaught building and tossing a container filled with gasoline inside. The building's sprinkler system extinguished the fire. There were no injuries, but there was some minor fire and water damage. There is no word yet on a motive or what charges the man may face. In the U.S., all eyes will be on Capitol Hill this week. The second impeachment trial for former President Donald Trump gets underway Tuesday. No other American president has been impeached twice by the House of Representatives. But as Jennifer Johnson explained, it appears unlikely the Senate will convict Trump of inciting an insurrection.
History will be made Tuesday on Capitol Hill as former President Donald.
No, it won't. What are you going to do?
To reassure it.
The first time we ever let a nigger we owned run the country.
Both allies don't want to choose between China and Washington. China is so much more important now for them.
Hey, we're not racist. You have cheek or have goop too, right? Where are we going?
Reassurance,
how come every media outlet is slowly just bullshitting everything?
And I suppose one of the key questions here is whether they do get simply beyond symbolism and rhetoric on that. Obama famously declared his so-called pivot to Asia, but it didn't really amount to much.
You would have to buy, China would have to buy 5 Camaros for every Mercedes.
Will be whether Biden can actually deliver more on that side of reassurance.
What's Canada flipping out? Oh, they're not buying our canola beans. They never were. They never did. What the fuck are you talking about?
Garrett, what's your take of this? Because not only allies from Asia, another divergence between the U.S. and these European allies is also their policies towards China. Because Biden said to stand shoulder to shoulder with the U.S. allies and called for confrontation on the so-called China's economic abuse. But French President Emmanuel Macron said also on Thursday that EU shouldn't gun up on China with the U.S. So how do you read these remarks?
You're absolutely right. I think
Across America safely reopen. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will release new guidelines on how to do that this week. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
The U.S. East Coast has been hit
Remember when you sold anthrax and smallpox?
More than 90 million Americans are dealing with either snow, rain, or cold temperatures, and in some cases, all of it. In New York State, drivers are having a tough time navigating roads that are packed with snow, and then there's the blowing snow hitting their windshields, making it difficult to see. As much as 20 centimeters is expected to fall in some parts of the state by tonight. In Utah, at least 4 skiers have been killed and several others injured in an avalanche. It's one of the deadliest slides in the state's history.
Which state?
Canada isn't escaping winter's wrath. There are snowstorm and cold weather warnings right across the country. On the East Coast, all of Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, as well as parts of New Brunswick and Newfoundland, are under a winter storm warning. Between 30 to 50 centimeters of snow could fall in some places. The wind is expected to gust up to 80 kilometers an hour. From Ontario to Alberta, Environment Canada issued extreme cold weather warnings. The wind chill will make it feel like minus 40. And bundle up in British Columbia. An Arctic air
We're
mass
gonna stick it out, eh? I hope you all fucking
temperatures
die.
are 5 to 20 degrees
With
below.
that busted crack pipe in one hand and the
A massive snowstorm
Listerine
pounded
bottle.
Germany
Yeah,
this
give a
weekend.
fuck what you
Some
say.
places saw up to 30 centimeters
We
of
kicked you
snow.
all out of
It
here and you
paralyzed
went west.
transportation
You
and
were
caused
supposed to make
hundreds
it all
of
the way
road
to the ocean
accidents.
and overdose.
It got
but
so
you
bad
didn't.
in some cities, ambulances were unable to
60,000 a
move
year.
through the
It's
streets.
1052 on
Police say
rent.
at least
Wow, you're a
28
genius.
people were injured because of black ice on roads. The forecast is calling for lower temperatures for the rest of the week.
Fierce winter weather forced the Netherlands to declare a code red. The weather alert is rare but deemed necessary because of the amount of snow, the strong winds, and bitter cold temperatures. It's the first major snowfall to hit the region in 10 years. As a result, many services were suspended, including train travel, grocery deliveries, and COVID-19 test sites. At least 9 people are dead and 140 are missing after the Nanda Devi Glacier burst in northern India.
Burst? The glacier's what do you mean it exploded?
It triggered an avalanche and a massive flood. The deluge
something that's a membrane with stuff inside of it can burst.
Hydroelectric stations.
This is a block of
More than
ice. What
100
happened?
workers are feared dead. Others are trapped. Search and rescue efforts are underway in this ecologically sensitive part of the Himalayas. The glacier is located on the second highest mountain in the country.
How many goji berries did you sell on this radio station?
A day-long internet blackout as it contends with widespread anger over its coup. Tens of thousands of protesters hit the streets chanting, "We don't want military dictatorship, we want democracy." It's been nearly a week since the military seized power and detained the country's elected leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, along with members of the National League for Democracy. The military restricted communications this weekend. An outside internet monitoring group says connectivity in the country is at about 95%, but social media sites like Facebook and Twitter are still blocked. Today's demonstrations are believed to be the largest since the 2007
So make a comment about how China does the same thing. No, because you don't know anything about China. You just know how to repeat what all the other talking heads repeat.
Coming up, the police force in Canada's largest city is putting on body cameras. But will the new policing tool put an end to discrimination? And his claim to fame was knocking out Muhammad Ali. We'll explain.
It's a policing tool. That's what they use to police us. Where police comes from. It's that thing.
There's still a lot of winter left. Is your furnace?
Taiwan Street. Many observers believe Biden administration hasn't come up with a specific guideline yet on China policy. So what do you make of this?
I mean, look, the mixed reactions could be the title of one of my colleagues writes on U.S.-China relations for the last 50 years. Right. I mean, there's no straightforward China policy because there's no straightforward relationship between the two countries. We are in probably a trilateral, even quadrilateral world, if that's even a word, with Europe, Russia, China, the United States. I mean, I'm not sure we've ever had a completely coherent policy towards China or Russia for quite a while, and I'm not sure that is going to change. You know, I think both sides are playing defense so much that you almost forget what the offensive playbook looks like, and I'm not sure that there's
great. So you watch football and you're just as dumb as the guys that watch it because you could not explain that sentence to me, no matter how much time I gave you. What's the difference between defensive and offensive? No, seriously. No, seriously. Sound it out. Sound it out.
I'm sure there needs to be a coherent policy. I'm not sure there can be a singular coherent policy.
Okay, Robert, one of our guests
what does that mean, sound it out?
Trump administration's policy has been labeled inconsistent and erratic. However, it seems that to continue to confront China was always high on the agenda. One testimony of the aggressive China policy is the revitalization of the Quad, a security dialogue consisting of the U.S., Japan, Australia, and India to counter China's influence in the region. So how do you predict the fate of the Quad under a Biden administration?
U.S., Japan.
Well, I think, again, it's not solely in Washington's hands. I think that, you know, there is some speculation at the moment.
We got to start doing this Venn
diagrams. The existing relationships, which have been founded on things like joint military exercises and so forth, will continue and deepen. I think that's going to happen. There's some speculation that perhaps there could be some intelligence advances.
Joint military, so you
one
think
or more of those countries, or perhaps all of them, could be brought into the Five Eyes system, although I think there's reason for skepticism about the levels of trust to see that happen.
Which one?
But ultimately, I think a lot of this does depend upon Beijing.
It's got to be Japan.
In effect, a number of actions that China has engaged in over recent years have encouraged, in particular, India and Australia to seek closer ties with Washington. So the development, I think, is not clearly in Washington's hands. Biden, particularly, I think, would like to see India become much more clearly aligned with the US. But he's running up against a lot of domestic factors in India which are hostile to that.
Yeah, paraquat poison.
So it remains to be seen, as it were, just events, as Harold Macmillan, the British Prime Minister, famously.
Hey, Biden, what are you going to do about that Agent Orange cleanup in Vietnam and the approval of Agent Orange for use on citrus crops?
How do you see China's position towards Biden administration?
Well, of course, it takes two to dance, and I think China, China's foreign policy needs to be.
One of these was the World Today, and that one wasn't it, was it? It was the World Today. They were both the World Today.
High quality, refined, and advanced technologies with the current shortage of auto chips expected to linger. Some automakers in the country have seen their sales grow after collaborating with auto chip makers. An electric car maker reported that the sales of one of their models hit 10,000 units over a period of 7 months after using chips produced by Horizon Robotics, a Chinese startup developing artificial intelligence chips for smart vehicles. Horizon's CEO Yu Kai says their product is the first auto chip in China to use AI technology.
You don't tell them either.
Since we rely on the local market, we are able to predict demand for smart vehicles and vehicle-mounted intelligent chips. We can then schedule production with precision to achieve capacity. It's imperative that the supply chain is close to the target consumer market. We manage our supply chain according to trends in the consumer market.
The chip achieved mass production in June of last year. More than 100,000 units have been installed in vehicles now. Global auto chip production has been declining for months. Many major suppliers have been cutting down on production or shutting down factories amid the COVID-19 outbreak. The current shortage mainly affects chips used for
but that's not why, because those guys wear 3 fucking bubble suits on top of each other.
Chinese automaker FAW is reporting robust sales growth for January.
It's impossible to breathe in the next guy's face if you're standing face to face. What are you talking about?
Sold more than 32,000 Hongqi sedans and over 79,000 Jiefeng trucks. FAW's joint ventures with Volkswagen and Toyota also reported robust growth in sales and production. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in sports, Super Bowl 55 is getting underway in Tampa.
$2 million, $10 million or something.
You're listening to the Beijing Hour.
So this is why a processor smaller than a MacBook comes in a box, like bigger than this. That's why. It's so that
47 past the hour now. Turning to sports, and here's Youngguang.
Thank you, Shane. The 2021 NFL finale is now underway in Tampa as the Buccaneers play
party, and then later, Trump actually, before the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic in the United States, Trump visited India and also Modi gave him back a huge party, making a very pleasant introduction. So I think the two countries are getting closer to each other strategically, and I think India is expecting a lot from the United States, getting sort of complying with the U.S. request of having more friction against China, attracting strategic resources from the east coast of China to the west. So in that respect, I think the current administration will continue some of that strategy and continue to encourage India strategically, and also actually tolerant India's domestic human rights violations and a lot of problems of its democracy, particularly this extra extreme nationalism that is the Modi government is fanning up. So I think overall this is a very problematic area that in the future I think not only U.S.-China need to address, but between China and India, they also need to come together to address these concerns.
So, Derek, what's your take on India's role and on what just Jeff said?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it depends on how much you think the politics of international relations are personal politics. My suspicion is that
you realize you're on Chinese radio,
very much in a trust
5,000 years of dynasties and bloodlines,
but also with China and with other countries with which we have important relationships, but not necessarily on an entirely trustworthy one, or one where either side completely depends on one another.
Japan doesn't build machine gun towers on those fucking islands. They don't own those islands. I've been listening to that story for at least 5 years.
Forcing the hand on events where I don't know if the rest of the world looks to the United States.
Ukraine doesn't choose to fight off Russia.
the last 4 years, and maybe the last 12 years or 20 years.
Garrett,
the only
what's your take on
country
this?
Syria
How
asked for help was
optimistic are
Russia.
you when you think of
That being the
U.S.-China
case,
relations in
you
the
can't
coming 4
justify
years?
bringing the white
Is
helmets
there
to
any
Canada.
possibility that U.S. and China could
They're
cooperate on issues concerning this region?
Well, the U.S. is an ally and a country ruled by the rule of law.
Very optimistic. I think that's fair to say.
They say it
I
was the
think
white
one of
helmets.
the difficulties is domestic. For the
But
United
you won't
States,
let a
because
old Spanish-speaking woman into the country.
The movement is towards taking a harder line towards China, and it's one of the rare issues where there is bipartisan support. It's rare. I know I'm based in Washington, D.C. There's not many.
Rugby World Cup runners-up England 11 points to 6 to claim their first victory at Twickenham since 1983 through a monumental all-round forwards effort and match controlling from their fly-half Finn Russell and fullback Stuart Hogg. Wales defeated Ireland 21-16, but I think the Irish should be commended for their efforts
tonight. That's crazy.
If you think back to the example of the Quad, I would argue China's actions have played a role in pushing India to cooperate more with the United States. So that's also, I think, going to be a key issue. And finally, I'd say, I think on the global challenges like the pandemic, or future pandemic, or climate change, even when relations are poor between the United States and China, I do think there is some avenue for cooperation. If Russia and the United States are able to cooperate on staff and on arms control, even though the rest of relations are terrible, I think there is some hope for at least compartmentalized cooperation between the United States and China.
It's not a real treaty. It means
Is there a
nothing.
possibility that the two could cooperate on issues concerning this region?
We're only allowed to have
I'm
3,100
cautiously optimistic
deployed
because
missiles
it's
and warheads.
Biden administration. It's no longer Trump administration. That's the good news, right? Because we've seen what the relationship can deteriorate so quickly in just 1 year. And I think in many areas, China has sent out signals to the Biden administration that China wants to cooperate. China also draws red lines of where China's core interests are. So I think the U.S. side is very clear about that.
Why the
And
U.S.
in
looks right
response, I
at that
think,
says we want it.
Today we've heard Biden's foreign policy speech and then the interpretation from Jake Sullivan, and they're talking about two things. The first one is great power competition, and the other one is to address so-called transnational threats. So that means they are actually elevating the problem that we're facing together.
That person
that
tried
means
to
that
fucking
will
cover
give
the money
some room for cooperation in the
You
future.
didn't hear them
If you
breathe right
recall,
next to the
during
mic.
the Obama administration, there are actually many programs in which
You
China
realize you're analyzing shit that don't matter. Nobody gives a fuck about what the last 3 idiots that were president did.
ATP Cup
When he
and
goes to
Melbourne
Africa,
Park
they
and
call him the
Spain
first
lost
Kenyan
in the
president of the United
semi-finals.
States. They
Nadal
don't
is
call him
on the
American.
bottom half of the Australian Open men's
He was
draw,
born on
and
Hawaii,
he's scheduled to
getting
play
off a
his
plane.
first round match against Laszlo
It's not
Djere
about
of
whether he has a
Serbia
birth
on
certificate or
Tuesday.
not.
On golf, world
You're
number
not
one
from
Dustin
there
Johnson
at all.
won the
Neither's his
Saudi
family.
International for the second time in 3 years
All
after shooting a
American.
2
Not
under
even.
68 in the
No, I
final
just wonder
round to
what went
finish
wrong
2
with such a
strokes
strong
clear
white
of
supremacist element in the
Justin
United
Rose
States
and Tony
that
Finau.
you elected an
Johnson, who
African
was
as
runner-up
president for
last
8
year,
years
recorded
straight.
his highest
How
scoring
did you
round
do
of the
that?
tournament. He says
No,
he's
he's halfway, I know,
unsatisfied
but
with his
you hate those worse than
It
straight
was a
up
really
black
good
people.
week. I felt like I played.
Yes, you do. Well, you keep trying to tell me I'm halfway.
We basically rely on mathematics, in particular on math problems that
Math
are
problem. So if half is halfway, the other half's
So
halfway,
basically,
you say you get a
you're
whole white
giving
person
a
something.
hacker or
I'm not
any
half on
computer
either side.
just an
It's
incredibly
like
difficult math
16 and
problem
30 seconds.
that is almost impossible to solve given the current technology. Exactly. And it so happens that the very mathematical problems that we rely on nowadays to communicate securely over the internet are the problems that are easy to solve on a quantum computer. Now, it should be noted that it is not clear when quantum computers will become powerful enough to do that. But
It's not powerful
he told me
enough.
it
It's
is
actually
possible to
used.
save
It's like the
encrypted
battery
data
steam
now
engine.
to then decrypt it later. Whether it's your financial records, whether it's your health
You need a
records,
nuclear power
whether
plant
it's,
to run this
your-
wristwatch. You guys are fucking stupid. You can outsmart.
Previous
smart.
administration
Can't
on
outsmart
this matter.
stupid. You guys tried to outsmart yourselves.
Well, I'm not
These
sure
quantum
how much
computers for
sharp
encryption
departure
that
has
a cell
been.
phone.
I mean,
can do.
his declaration was that the US would no longer support offensive operations.
Yeah, but they're still theoretical.
in
They're not
Yemen.
a thing yet.
So leaving Washington some wiggle room in terms of carrying on supporting the Saudis with intelligence and so forth. And actually, to be fair to the Trump administration, they'd actually stopped refueling Saudi and Emirati warplanes back in 2018. So I think, you know, it's not insignificant.
It's nothing.
But equally, it's testimony to the fact that clearly, while Biden
you can't buy gas here, they're going to buy it on the next intersection. It means nothing. The ranges on those planes
and so forth, more in favor of humanitarian gestures, willing to stand up to the Saudis. The actual substance.
As you sell them weapons, buy their oil. But why is money changing hands at all? That is the funny part. The bankers are laughing at you. They take a cut in each direction. What the fuck's wrong?
Strategically in the Middle East between Sunni Arab states, Israel, and Iran. And so this is a notable
you're going to get yourself shot saying things like that.
Well, that remains
Israel's instigating Iran. Really.
Derek Trump touted about his success in the Middle East policy.
Well, what's the one place ISIS never attacks?
Have already been done by Trump administration in the region. You know, go back to the negotiation table with Iran and also balance relations between Israel and the
calls
Gulf
that
Arab
except
states.
for the United States government and the Israeli government.
It's hard to tell, right? Because
ISIS.
Trump was the rooster who took credit for the sunrise.
They tricked a lot of the European media to call it Islamic State. They're not Islamic and they're not a state.
Places, certainly there's
Again, it comes back to that word .x, which would be a proper noun.
Back to the sort of regime that we had.
So what does ISIS have to do with ISIS? Why do you keep telling us it's the same thing?
So that was a clear-cut change. It'll be interesting to see the approach that Biden takes. But I think that Robert just used the concept
and I can't think of a more like
balancing power,
chasing your tail way of making money.
That will be the delicate
stealing crude oil. It's selling it to who? Half of what you need the money for is to buy gas.
Students to abide by their host government's guidance on coronavirus prevention and control. Mayor of Leuven sent his good wishes via video link. If you were at a certain Shanghai bookstore lately, you might have been lucky enough to catch Kunchu opera star Jung Joon live streaming his show from there. It's all part of celebrations to mark the 20th anniversary of Kunchu Opera's recognition by UNESCO as part of the intangible heritage of all humanity. Yoon Ching-yoon has more.
Bye.
Under the Iran nuclear deal, you have to have Iran play ball. But you might upset Israel and some of the other allies.
So what? Israel is nothing but the aid they get from other countries. It's nothing.
When they are real trade-offs involved.
What's the demographics? A whole bunch of old white people. How the fuck did you get to the Middle East anyway? You popped up a year after the end of World War II. Pale as hell, Austrian as hell. I'm gonna keep telling that story until someone proves it wrong. What people you never hear about getting their blood tested to prove their DNA heritage?
World Today is an excellent initiative.
Okay, that's reassuring. Bill Thompson, thank you so much. That's it for this week. The producers today are Deborah Cohen.
You couldn't find any of the SS.
And I'm Gareth Mitchell. More next
Over 100 U-boats went missing, never to be seen again. You're on the wrong part of the fucking planet. You took a word from a book, claimed it as your own, or applied it to a place that was in the same place in the book. Oh, I got the map in the back of the Bible.
At that time, stage performances were canceled.
Your photos to viewers at globalnational.com. Thank you for watching. Donna Friesen will be at the anchor desk tomorrow. Have a good night, and I'll see you.
Right, the simulcast. I forgot about that. I forgot they do the global news. It's over now. That's why they call it Global News Talk Radio. That's genius. Your global station has global news, and your radio station is called Global News Talk. You guys,
Good evening. This is Sunday, February.
Marketing and branding is just flawless.
Richie, here's what's making.
I'm Richie, Christine.
Will Tom Brady win another Super Bowl, or will the Kansas City Chiefs
get a win? Did you watch TV, stupid?
The city of Toronto is under.
Or even better, they might be listening on the sports radio station you own.
And this last winter weather is looking to stick around. Toronto
Public Health confirming the first known cases of 2 more contagious COVID-19 variants first spotted
as opposed to the ones that aren't
and
contagious.
Brazil.
If fear of the nasal swab has kept you from being tested for COVID, you should know new research shows that the VC developed and user-preferred Google test is highly accurate.
A Super Bowl.
We've been told that it's the nasal swab test is only as accurate as the person taking it. By you. You've told us this.
So far as yet to score.
It's not how it's supposed to work.
0-0 in the first half. Sports 50. And coming up in business, U.S. airlines are trying to cash in on Canada's service restrictions to some destinations, but one industry expert says the bigger problem is still the government support.
That's all airlines do. They're the most opportunistic, predatory companies out there.
Time for traffic and weather together on the ones. Here's Craig Gear.
Well, it's a good drive.
They're all
pretty
about
much everywhere,
psychology and
except,
marketing.
we have one slow spot, and that's getting around a collision here. By the way, Tampa Bay, first team ever to play the Super Bowl in their home stadium.
Nobody cares.
Yeah, I learn something new every day.
The
Westbound 401 west
shit.
of Kennedy and the Collectors, 2
First to
lanes are
ever
blocked
play in
off
the
here
home
because
stadium.
of this crash. It's slow from approaching Kennedy in the Collectors. The
How does that
west
statement
ramp
even
to the
make
west
sense?
401 is also blocked here
The
with a
fucking
collision.
bitch that does
And
the
the
traffic
westbound
just told you
401
that
ramp
one.
to Jamestown Parkway has been closed for another crash.
I have no idea where you
on
play the
city
Super Bowl. Where the
streets.
fuck
We
you
have
play it
some
other than
issues
in your
with
fucking
going
stadium?
at from Stamford Avenue to Mortimer, closed for fire investigation. It's been that way since just after 5. And then Albion, we have another crash. Both directions at Albion and Elmhurst. We have a pretty serious collision here getting taken care of. Next report's at 7:11, and with the forecast, here's Emily Vukovic.
It's going to be a very cold night in the GTA. The city has issued a cold weather alert reminding residents to dress in layers, cover exposed skin, and stay dry. Partly cloudy tonight, going down to -12, but feeling more like -19.
It's not to tell you how to fucking dress in the cold weather, you fucking
Also sun and cloud tomorrow, the high of -6, although feeling like -10 with the wind. Periods of snow tomorrow night with the temperature steady near -8. Our overnight low is -12.
And we are sitting at -10, feeling like a -20 with a few clouds. 680 News Time, 7:03.
It's the greatest day of the year for American football fans as Super Bowl 55 is underway. Wings, beer, and lots of big budget commercials are what we're looking forward to tonight.
Colin Teskey from Sportsnet 590 The Fan joins us with details on the big game.
Is Tom Brady in the Super Bowl for the 10th time a familiar place for TB12 as Tampa Bay
I think 10 or
Buccaneers
12
playing
minutes
in
of
their
every
home
hour is
stadium of Tampa Bay
sports.
taking
When they have a sports station and 2 sports TV stations and an app.
Of course, that polar vortex from the prairies has spread across.
The polar vortex from the prairies. You're a fucking genius too. You're dumb as hell. That would be an Alberta Clipper, would it not?
On Monday will be -6, but it's
I'll give you a little tip. The prairies are to the west and the Arctic.
Snowfall warnings in place
pole-
after Bruce
the
Peninsula,
polar
Barrie,
is up.
Aurelia. Another 10 to 15
So
centimeters
towards the
is
north, I
expected in
guess.
those areas overnight tonight as those winds will continue to be strong.
Which is odd. That's the only thing not happening is the wind.
It's Sunday, February 7th. I'm Mercedes Stevenson, and you're listening to the West Block.
Oh, wow.
This week on the West Block, pandemic procurement problems.
We are in a time of global turbulence where production lines are being ramped up. And as
No, they're
that
not.
occurs,
What the
we can
fuck are you
expect
talking about?
turbulence or shifting in the delivery schedules. Some of these manufacturers.
What's every company say?
They didn't really plan.
Except for Etel Pasta. Etel Pasta dropped from like 52 types of pasta to 6, and now they run 3 shifts a day,
I would
24/7.
believe them before I believe that the government didn't actually know what was going on.
An exclusive sit-down with the defense minister on what he knew.
The defense minister, we
Canada's
don't have one of
former
those right
top
now, do we?
soldier, General Jonathan Vance, is under investigation by military police and the Department of National Defense after Global News revealed allegations of sexual misconduct. Vance is accused of having had an inappropriate relationship
Global
with a
News
subordinate
review
officer
because
while
no,
under his
you don't
direct
make
command
sense.
in
You opened a
2006
story that they were
and during his
investigating.
time as chief of the defense staff.
They're investigating him
Vance is
because
also
you
accused
printed
of
a story
sending
about him
an email
and
making a
them
sexual
investigating him.
advance on a
No, they didn't.
25-year-old corporal.
That doesn't
Speaking
make
to
sense at
Global
all.
News,
It's
Vance
a logical
denied any
possibility.
inappropriate behavior. Global News also reported the Minister of National Defense was made aware of concerns about Vance in 2018. Minister Harjassajan joins us now to discuss this.
Captain
This is difficult news for many in the
kidnap
military.
and rape, and
The
fucking they did
allegations
nothing about
that
him.
have come forward are very serious against General Vance. I'm also aware that
they're not compared to the Canadian forces in general. This is one of the most minor accusations ever.
Some clarity on what exactly you learned at that time, and if that was the first time that you heard about concerns of the conduct of General Vance.
First of all, you're talking about the shock that I think all of us had in the last week with the allegations that have been brought forward. I can only imagine the shock and the confidence that has been broken with all the women.
How are you claiming to have been introduced to these allegations by Global News when they reported that he was under investigation?
Concerning things.
I'm glad you're bringing this investigation that my men are doing to my attention. You're fucking retarded, bro. And this is why nobody listens
open in Vaughan today and is expected to
Canadian
help
government.
alleviate pressure on an overwhelmed healthcare system.
What the
6
fuck
News' Tim
happened?
Chapman
The last
has
2
more on
dozen
the
people I've
Carleton
heard.
Hospital.
The new $1.7 billion facility has earmarked 35 ICU beds and 150 general internal medicine beds for COVID-19 patients. Its emergency room will be closed for now as it focuses on expanding its intensive care capacity and the ability to eventually accept transfer patients from other hospitals. The immediate goal of the hospital is to help alleviate an overwhelmed healthcare system while treating critical COVID patients.
Sure,
Mayor
but they were
Mauricio
planning on
Bello
building
would
this 2
describe
years
the
before the
opening as
fucking
historic and says it will create 1,000
started.
jobs for the community as it continues on to becoming a full-service healthcare facility. This comes as the province reported 926 people are currently hospitalized with COVID-19, including 335 people in intensive care and 233 patients on a ventilator. I'm Tim Chapman.
You're listening to All News Radio 680 News at 7:07. A gradual reopening of Ontario's economy is set to begin on Monday. However, stay-at-home orders will be extended for another week. 680's Madison Fitzpatrick joins us
Because the
with
economy is
details.
what they stop.
We're expected to get a formal announcement from the Premier
Can you people
tomorrow.
even describe
That's
what an
sources
economy
tell
is?
680 News the state of emergency will expire. According to the plan, the province will have an emergency brake in place to allow the government to quickly move a region into lockdown if cases jump again. Roger Ward from the Canadian Press says the current stay-at-home order will remain in place in much of the province.
The regions will transition back to the color-coded restrictions they used before. But hotspots like Toronto,
Yeah, but the virus ain't confined to certain regions. I don't know where this idea comes from.
the week of February the 22nd.
There's no borders between provinces, there's no borders between cities, there's no borders between public health regions.
Virus is low.
It's all on paper. It's arbitrary and
And York Regional
administrative.
Police have provided an update after a deadly stabbing in East Gwillimbury yesterday.
We don't care.
Detectives say the 3 people rushed to hospital are now
At
expected to be
2 in the afternoon,
Officers
at
arrived and found
10,
a
2 guys
38-year-old
got
woman
shot, and no one's talking about that.
Launching an independent and very thorough investigation separate from the chain of command so that we can get the answers. And one thing I can assure you, it will be thorough, it will be deep, and also we're going to be looking at who's complicit throughout any of these allegations as well.
Well, Minister, I just want to go
Can
back there.
someone
to ask
explain how
again,
that guy
did
was
you at
found
any point
guilty of
raise
21
this
charges?
with Prime Minister PRO or any of his senior staff or fellow members of cabinet?
Mercedes, one thing I can assure you is that any type of information has been was brought to the appropriate authorities for the appropriate process, and it was followed up thoroughly on this. And for the sake of protecting the integrity of the current investigation, I can't comment on anything further on this. We owe it to the survivors who have come forward to making sure that we protect the integrity of the investigation.
So that's not a yes or a no to whether or not the Prime Minister and cabinet were aware of this.
As I say, we have to. I know we want answers, Mercedes. I want answers, especially all the women in the Canadian Armed Forces who deserve the answers on this and the changes that are needed, and for Canadians. But it's the independent investigation that will determine this, and also if these allegations lead to a court, we'll get the answers. But the last thing that I want to do here is to be able to undermine the investigation and undermine any potential justice that may come from these allegations.
Do you wish in retrospect that you'd done more when you heard some of these allegations coming from the Ombudsman?
One thing I can assure you, Mercedes, this has been a top priority. Making
So that's a psych thing a lot of white guys do, and that's why I keep saying white people are raped. They say your name and they think horrible things about you. They say your name at you like a command.
$50 back on your first transfer with promo code.
It's just like the neuro-linguistic programming. That's why they're always trying to grab us by the shoulders. I can't tell you the number of white dudes that try to grab me by the shoulder. If I go to walk around them, they'll step in front of me to like forcibly shake my hand. You not the fuck up
with the snow at Salter.
You know what you are. You're trying to normalize you touching people, but yourself beyond reproach.
Better material flow.
It all sounds Dutch to me. Just get a snow at Salter at Point Brothers.
KOOYBROS.com.
And don't forget to bring your wallet.
Oh.
680 News Time, 7-11, time for traffic and weather
Black and
together.
orange everywhere.
Here's Greg here.
A couple of problems that we had out there have cleared away, like on the westbound 401 west of Kennedy. The collectors, we had a collision through here. It's cleared away now, so these delays have eased rather nicely. Southbound Weston ramp to the west 401 still blocked here with a collision, and the westbound 401 ramp to Jamestown Parkway
They're all going to
closed
keep
with another
talking
crash.
nonsense.
We had a stall on the South 427 through Dundas and the Express blocking a lane, but that's gone. Same with our collision on city streets. Albion has reopened both directions at Elmhurst now. The fire investigation still underway. Woodbine shut down Salmon Avenue to Mortimer. Next report at 7:21.
Our nurses, our ICU nurses, they're off them, but it's very difficult.
What advice would you give to this young nurse? His name is Tiago. He is 25. He's nursing for about 3 or 4 years. He may be called into the ICU next week that deals with COVID patients. He has recovered from COVID and he has got the vaccine.
Well,
what would you say to him?
I need you.
So much for herd immunity.
That's what I said.
And the Russians told us that at least 6 months ago.
We need you. You will learn. You will learn. Nobody blames anybody. People learn fast. Everybody does mistakes. You do less and less mistakes. We need you.
I find that incredibly moving and incredibly powerful. Just that line that you need.
Useless. So this guy is somehow going to talk somebody else.
What? 10,031. The 1,081 new infections logged in the province today also took Quebec's total case count over 270,000.
Quebec, please keep pronouncing it.
1,489 new infections today and 22 associated deaths. Numbers were much lower in
Don't
Nova
tell me,
Scotia
well, in
and
English it's pronounced this. No, it's not. They're all French loan words.
7 new cases, respectively.
All French.
Michelle McQuigg, The Canadian Press.
Your top stories and sports coming up in just 60 seconds. 680 News Time, 7:13.
Share some happy with McCafe. Starting February 8th, you can enjoy a consistently rich, smooth, and delicious medium McCafe premium roast coffee, hot or iced, for $1 plus tax. At participating restaurants for a limited time. Prices exclude delivery.
Experience the peppery, savory McDonald's chicken you crave at breakfast. That's right, the Chicken McMuffin, made with Canadian raised seasoned chicken. Just $2.99 plus tax until 11 a.m.
Canadian raised.
So if we're receiving
Canadian
a
raised.
victim of the vaccine
Heard that.
at the end of a quarter, as opposed to, week by week, as they had been informing the provinces.
Things contributing to a significant spike in COVID-19.
No, it's going down.
Community spread is making more and more people sick, threatening to overwhelm our hospitals and putting all of us at risk.
Teachers union told me it's going down, except for the little bastard
We all
kids.
need
It's
to
their
follow
fault.
public health advice and guidelines. That means staying home except for essential reasons, like buying groceries. Stay home, stay safe, save lives. Paid for by the Government of Ontario.
Number 1 for breaking news, traffic, and weather. This is 680 News.
It's -10, feeling like -20 with clear conditions in downtown Toronto. Good evening. From the 680 News Broadcast Center, I'm James Mackin, and here are the top stories this hour. Super Bowl 55 is happening right.
And if we gave a fuck, we'd be watching it. Wow, the logic of a Nazi is really fucked up.
Things have slowed down. There's a lot of questions about when we'll get vaccines, less vaccines that were planned in the short term. Canada right now is 35th overall in the world in terms of the number of vaccinations.
No one will know it's an
giving
attack if
people.
we do it with
Why
voodoo,
is it that
because you're paying
34
for
other
it, right?
countries
That's
are
the
ahead of us?
logic.
Well, thanks for having me on the show, and I want to reiterate that after a temporary reduction last week, we are ramping back up. We have 1.4 million vaccines delivered into this country, and we have shipments from Pfizer and Moderna already arrived this past week in this country, and we are ramping back up to
You're
ensure
all
that
talking
we
like you
reach
know
our
exactly
target
where this
of
shit is.
2 million.
Everybody wants to work logistics till they actually have to do paperwork. Everybody wants to be in the army when it comes to fucking shoveling shit. Thank you. More shit I didn't touch. You look however you want. You look however you want. My foot could not have touched this crate. The fuck is going on here? The fucking hell? And voodoo's not real. It's real. It just don't work for shit. The fucking quality of the people paying for it, I think. Yeah, I wonder why people fucking hate you by fucking creed and nationality. Look at what you do, and then you identify. We do this because of our culture. No, you don't. There's a bunch of child abusers too. Or you wouldn't focus so much on attacking me in a freaking video that I know I'm making. You come do something in person. God damn. Script kitties. Well, it's calling up something, so you must be dumping on it or something. Come on. Keep it up. It's not worth pointing out every stupid little thing that happens. Come on. Keep dumping. It's all good. That's how you'll prove to the world that you are not a sex offender, is by attacking everybody that is anti-sex offender. You're a genius. You're perusing the message boards to get the cut and paste codes. Every time I press play, it shuts it off again. It's the third time in a row it's shut it off. I guess now somehow I won't have any volume, right? God, be kidding. It's number 4. Come on. And keep freezing the viewfinder too.